Mike, I know you have a list. Guests first, give us your top 10.
So I went back and obviously looked at the list of films from 2010, and it was a solid year. Like there was some I had some struggles with the bottom. I left off like Black Swan and The Fighter and Inside Job, which I all like very much. So I'll just go 10. 10 was True Grit. The remake of the True Grit. I love the style, the pacing, the acting of the young actress in the movie was fantastic. Performances were fantastic throughout the whole movie. Number 9, I had Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I thought visually this movie was fun. I thought this was kind of a unique film that came at it from multiple angles. Number 8, I had Exit Through the Gift Shop, which is the Banksy documentary, which I thoroughly enjoyed and learned a lot about the kind of inner story within the story that's being told. I found fascinating. Number 7, I put The King's Speech because I think there are some good performances in there. It's not my all-time favorite movie, but I thought it was it's obviously like an Oscar bait movie. I thought I love Colin Firth. I love Jeffrey Rush's character in it. Helen Bonham Carter. I always mess up her name. I think she was great. And I thought the performances were great, and I think it was a solid end-to-end movie.
On this podcast, we are anti-people who are anti the Oscar winner. We think that the backlash to the Oscar winner is often annoying. I have The King's Speech in my honorable mentions, so don't worry about it.
I think it's a good movie. I think it's hard to put together because the good ones, like the old directors you were mentioning, Spielberg can put together a movie. Like visually is so good at it. Makes it look so easy that you kind of forget how hard that is. And so like a thoroughly well thought through movie that has the beats and has the whole thing. Brad and I, we've obviously, why am I blanking on that? Oh, Book of Henry. We've talked about Book of Henry. If you want to really enjoy King's Speech, go watch Book of Henry first. You will be craving the structure of a well done movie.
That's like any movie. You should watch Book of Henry first.
It's the ginger on a sushi plate. It's such a palate cleanser to make you like the new thing. Yeah.
I do have to. I will just say the director of The King's Speech is a guy called Tom Hooper, who also directed Cats. So not necessarily the best example of a guy who always knows how to make a well-crafted movie. But he also made the John Adams miniseries, which Jake somehow still hasn't seen, which is crazy to me.
I mean, after filming it, it's just sometimes I don't go. So.
All right, Mike, back to your list.
All right, back at it. We've got number 6 was Kick-Ass. Number 5 is Inception, which I think is a visually stunning film. I think for me, I don't like when films kind of take themselves too seriously, and it's Christopher Nolan movies always just seem to take themselves so seriously for me. Like it doesn't. Brad, you've talked about Tom Hardy, and it's hard to watch him because it doesn't seem like he has joy in his performances. Christopher Nolan movies have a little bit of that to me. Of course, they're well done and the stories are great, but it's just like the whole it's a heavy all the time.
It's so funny you say that because this is the only movie where Tom Hardy's having a good time.
He's enjoying himself, but yeah. It's because there's somebody darker than he is at some point. Number 4, I have Toy Story 3. The Toy Story sequels are just textbook how to write a sequel, unique stories that play off the old thing. I'll leave it there. I just think that the Toy Story 3, I think they're all unique films that really nail it every single time. Number 3, I have Boy, which we talked about. That shot up my list very quickly. Number 2 is How to Train Your Dragon. I love this movie. It totally caught me off guard when I saw it for the first time. Again, I worked in animated movies for a long time. I was expecting a DreamWorks movie because it's a DreamWorks movie, and it is not a DreamWorks movie. It's so heartfelt, and the end is so good. It's a story that I share with my kids. We talk about it a lot. It's just it was one of the first times where there was like a kids movie with actual consequences at the end. Like a thing happens that utterly changes the character in a way that you don't expect. I won't ruin How to Train Your Dragon. I thought it was one of the best animated movies I've ever seen.
And you're really excited for the live action remake.
I will see it. It's like one of those I like it so much. I will see it. But I also of all the live action remakes, which by the way, that phrase for all my visual effects artists out there is a bullshit phrase because all of those movies are just a different way of doing 3D. It's like live action Lion King. Like, oh, really? Did they teach lions how to act?
Well, that's the most egregious one because that one's just animated.
But it's all like it's a different craft. It's a different way.
Yeah, I mean, and also like the majority of the characters in all of them are still CG 3D animated.
The funniest about the trailers for How to Train Your Dragon is Toothless looks exactly like Toothless, and it's just Toothless. It's like, come on, guys, what are we doing here?
I just want to push back against one thing you said. I also love How to Train Your Dragon, but we're DreamWorks defenders on this podcast. I've just recently finished watching all the DreamWorks movies. While their hit rate is not great, neither is Disney's and neither is Pixar's anymore. So I mean, DreamWorks is doing. I'm just as excited for a DreamWorks movie now as I am for the potential of a DreamWorks movie as I am for a Disney movie at this point.
I'll give you that. I mean, I worked at Blue Sky Studios, which again put out 5 Ice Age movies. I was just talking about this morning. So they're making a 6th one away from Blue Sky Studios, which I
saw.
I remember when I was working at the studio, a kid wrote in. We were making like Ice Age 4 or 5, I forget which one, but a kid wrote in a letter to the studio like, "I love the Ice Age movies. I have an idea for the next sequel," and laid out a plot that was better than anything we've ever done. It was basically like, so Ice Age 1 was Manny and the crew save a human baby's life and return him to these hunters. This is a very complex relationship between Manny and the family that he lost, and then he's saving this kid and like the group coming together and yada yada yada. And the kid just wrote in a story and he was just like, "Hey, I think for a sequel, I think the kid should come back as a hunter," and runs into him and like it's them dealing with it, and then the kid trying to stop the other hunters from hunting the animals. And I was like,
that sounds great.
That sounds great. And I was like, guys, we actually should make this movie. And then we made a movie about an asteroid and prehistoric creatures saving the world from an asteroid. And I was like, all right, whatever, it pays the bills. It's all good. I've left off my number 1 movie from the list, which is Shutter Island. That is a underrated film from that time period. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Plot twists. It's big year for DiCaprio between this and Inception. He really had a year. I think it's a well done story visually. It's one that I rewatch occasionally and pick up something new every single time. But I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. So I'll stop talking now.
My 20 to 11 really fast, no commentary, but The Town, Due Date is probably my most controversial one. Todd Phillips movie. Ghost Rider, Roman Polanski movie. Maybe that's my most controversial one. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Disney's Tangled, The King's Speech, How to Train Your Dragon, David O. Russell's The Fighter. A lot of bad guys making movies this year. The American, and Winter's Bone were my 20 through 11. I love all those movies very much. My number 10 is David Fincher's The Social Network. Called by many the best movie of that decade and of the millennium so far. I also like The Social Network quite a bit. I think it's very good. It was a little bit lower on my Fincher ratings, but Jesse Eisenberg cemented himself as a star. I actually think Andrew Garfield is like the real thing holding that movie together, and I'm not even the biggest Andrew Garfield fan, but I loved him here. And Justin Timberlake can act, which we know because Alpha Dog exists, but also The Social Network exists, which is a very good movie. My number 9 is Inception. I like Inception a lot. I think I remember being annoyed that he was taking a break between Batman movies at the time, and then this came out and I'm like, oh, there's nothing to be annoyed about. This was crazy. My number 8 is Danny Boyle's 127 Hours, a crazy movie about James Franco getting his arm stuck between 2 rocks and then having to, spoiler alert, cut off his own arm. It's a true story about a guy who had to do that. It's gnarly, but it's great. My number 7 is Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan, one of the better like modern Hitchcockian movies. It's very scary. For my money, it's Natalie Portman's best role, Mila Kunis's best dramatic role. There's not a lot to compare to, but Portman's hits it out of the park. I love Black Swan. My number 6 is Richard Ayoade. Speaking of people in the Taika Waititi circle, Richard Ayoade made a great coming-of-age movie also called Submarine, starring Craig Roberts, but featuring Noah Taylor and Patty Considine as like some of the older adults in the movie. And it's a love story with Craig Roberts playing this like misanthrope kid, and he's in love with this lunatic girl played by Yasmin Page. Great movie. Saw it for the first time just a few years ago. Was really sucked in by it. If you're into movies like Harold and Maude and that kind of vibe, it's really got that going for it. Ayoade, really underrated filmmaker. Very funny guy in general too. My number 5 is Shutter Island. Martin Scorsese may not like this movie, but he's wrong. It turns out he's right about Marvel movies. God, I cannot get over how much Captain America 4 sucked. But he was wrong about his own movie, Shutter Island, which I think is just great noir, cool mystery, probably my favorite Mark Ruffalo performance. I just think this movie's super cool. Number 4 is Denis Villeneuve's Incendie. It's a rough watch. Worth it. One of Villeneuve's best movies, and he's in my top 5 favorite directors, but holy crap, the subject matter is tough. It's a shame that The Kite Runner got made into a movie that wasn't very good. I thought that was a very good book, and Incendie sort of makes up for that. Anyway, French-Canadian movie, so subtitles. Number 3 is the Coen Brothers' True Grit. We've talked about this movie at great length because we covered the original version, the John Wayne version, on this podcast. They're very similar, but True Grit's got so much, the Coen Brothers version has so much style, so much fun. My number 2 is Boy. We've talked about that a lot, so a lot of New Zealand representation going on here. And my number 1 is Toy Story 3, which I think is one of like the top 3 or 4 animated movies ever made. I've almost never had that kind of emotional reaction to an animated movie. And as we know, I'm massive animated movie fan. All three of us are, obviously. I had such an intense reaction to that movie in the theater, and I love it every time I rewatch it. I don't like Toy Story 4, but I'm ready to like Toy Story 5. Toy Story 4, okay, so I felt like 1, 2, 3, that's a perfect trilogy, and I was mad about 4 coming out, and then I felt vindicated that I thought the movie was like very medium. Rewatched it, I'm like, no, it still feels very medium to me, but now that they've broken that seal, I'm ready for 5 to be very, very good. And I would like for it to be.
My one surprise from your list is that an Aaron Sorkin movie made your list. I know that
it's not an Aaron Sorkin movie. Okay, look, I actually like his movies. I like Trial of the Chicago 7. I like A Few Good Men. I like his movies. His TV is unbearable, and one of the cool, I wish I had said this about The Social Network, I did in our Fincher episode, is you can feel the push-pull between Sorkin and Fincher in The Social Network. I mean, Sorkin's dialogue makes it through, and I said in that video, you can go back and watch, I remember very vividly saying, I hate the opening 10 minutes of that movie. I absolutely hate that Rooney Mara, Jesse Eisenberg scene. I think it is so obnoxious. No one has ever talked that way, especially now we know, especially not Mark Zuckerberg. That guy can barely string 2 words together.
It's funny because I actually like Aaron Sorkin more, I think, more than you do. But I found the dialogue in that movie like on like the opposite of Boy, which is just like I'd never seen any of these people in real life. Like I don't know. It was again a world I don't necessarily know. At the same time, like I don't feel like I felt like it was just like some cleaned up perfect version of it. By the way, Toy Story 4, a little fun bit about that one that I heard from an artist that worked on it. And one of the things about Woody's eyes in that movie is because he's pretty cloudy in the beginning about like his purpose and like what he's doing, and then there's a conversation he has with Bo Peep where I think where it all kind of just like snaps in for him. His eyes actually change from that point. His eyes are kind of murky, a little bit grayer and dimmer, the eye whites. And then as the second that he like gets clarity, he's got crystal clear eyes the rest of the movie, which I thought was like it was like a really subtle thing. But I think that's like a fun little story.
So I can't hear stuff like that without thinking about Judd Apatow's Love, which was a series on Netflix. It's great, so funny. Stars Paul Rust. There's a bit in the 3rd season where he's making his own independent movie. He's just some schmuck who lives in an apartment complex for divorced dads. He's making this independent movie. And he's like, all right, bring in the fog because our main character is cloudy about his purpose. And then later on, he's got his purpose. So get the fog out of here. And whenever I hear stuff like that, I'm like, it's just that kind of crap.
Yeah, I mean, that keeps people in business. I don't poo-poo that. It keeps a lot of artists doing what they do.
All right, Jake.
All right, like Brad, I'll do my 20 through 11 just without commentary, especially like a lot of these have been mentioned already anyway. So 20 through 11, I've got Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, 127 Hours, The Town, King's Speech, How to Train Your Dragon. Actually, we'll say one thing about How to Train Your Dragon, and that while this new remake coming out is not for us, I took my daughter to see the Dogman film, and we saw the trailer for How to Train Your Dragon, and she lit up like a Christmas tree. I mean, she's 12 years old, so like when I think about these movies, I'm like, ugh, who is this for? Then I remember that's who it's for.
No, but that's bad what you're saying, actually, because it's exploitative. I guarantee you in 10 years, she's going to remember the animated one, and she's not going to remember this.
Well, we'll come back when we're doing the podcast in 10 years.
Well, we still will be doing it, yeah. If we're still alive.
Yeah. The rest of the honorable mentions, The Fighter, another tough one, Blue Valentine with Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams. And then my 13 through 11 is actually this trilogy of films called Red Riding. They're subtitled 1974, 1980, 1983. It's about a series of murders in England. It actually stars Andrew Garfield in one of them. David Morrissey is in another one of them. Patty Considine is in another one of them. But it's 3 very different movies, all kind of about the same thing. And they're all really, really cool.
I am shocked and very pleased that you would put TV movies in your list.
Were those TV movies? Is that what it was? I don't remember why. Like, I don't remember what the impetus was for me to see them. I don't know who had like recommended them to me or whatever. But yeah, they're just great.
I mean, I'm all for TV movies. I think there's a lot of hidden gems in TV movies.
I mean, great is great. Speaking of great, my number 10, we talked about at great length. I have The American. My number 9 is the best foreign film Oscar winner from that year. It's a movie called The Secret in Their Eyes. Was then remade into a terrible Julia Roberts, Chiwetel Ejiofor version, but the original, it's in Argentina. I want to say it was from Argentina. Yeah, really cool mystery movie with one of those just great endings that'll stick with you forever. My number 8, mentioned on both of your lists, also is True Grit. I love the Coens. I love Jeff Bridges. Haley Steinfeld was nominated for supporting actress for this movie, which I think is such a crock. I think, category fraud comes up every year, but there's no way she is not the lead of that movie. Insanity. Number 7, a movie I don't think a lot of people have seen and probably wouldn't even recognize, this movie with Paul Giamatti and Dustin Hoffman called Barney's Version. Just a really wild character piece, or Giamatti is just as good as he's ever been in anything else. And Dustin Hoffman is his dad. Their dynamic is just great. It's a really, really cool movie. My number 6 is the one we've also both mentioned, Black Swan. Just awesome. Yeah, I also agree. Natalie Portman's best role. Mila Kunis is great in this. And Vincent Cassel, also just outstanding in that. Number 5, I think, Brad, I think this was on your honorable mention this, but Deborah Granick's Winter's Bone, the first movie I saw Jennifer Lawrence in, and I was like, oh, she is really good. And then, as it turned out, she is really good and has continued to be good over the years. But it's, really a bleak movie, but really, really well made. Number 4, a film by a director named Jacques Audiard, who is currently nominated for Best Director for his, well, let's say, just controversial Emilia Perez. But in 2010, he had a movie come out called A Prophet, jail, a drama, like a crime drama. A lot of it takes place in jail. Movie is just unbelievably cool. Just knocked me out the first time I saw it. I think I went and saw it living in Omaha at the time, and I worked at an art house type theater. And if you volunteered there, which I did, I volunteered there, you would get tickets to come back and see a movie for free. And I remember seeing A Prophet, and then I went back and I think I saw it 3 or 4 days later again. It's this movie is just dynamite, and I still love it. It's very, very cool. 3 through 1 are going to be all very familiar. Number 3 for me is Inception. Yeah, it's awesome. Everybody's cool in it, and it's just a cool movie. And we watched it fairly recently. It holds up. I love it so much. Very cool, theatrical experience, like most Nolan movies you like to see on a big screen. Very, very cool. My number.
Not sure it makes any sense, but it's very cool.
Doesn't have to. It didn't bother me. And then my number 2 is Toy Story 3, which, like you guys have echoed, is just an amazing movie in every aspect. Brad, you mentioned never having an emotional reaction like that in an animated film, but the amazing thing about Toy Story 3 is that there's 2 of those, because you get the one where they're going down the incinerator, and Buzz reaches out his hand to Woody, which is just kills me. I can't even think about it. And then you get the one again at the end with Andy giving his toys to Bonnie. You get that 1-2 punch. It's really hard to top. Toy Story 3, arguably one of maybe the greatest sequel ever, at least maybe the greatest threequel ever. And then my number 1 is, I do love The Social Network, and all the nice things that we've said about it already hold true for me as well. But hard choice for me between those top 2. I think they're both just so great.
It gave us Armie Hammer, and isn't that the most important thing?
Yeah, you know what? It's pretty good in this.
My favorite Bradism of all time, which your heart was in the right place, but you just picked the wrong one, is when the story about Jared from Subway came out. And you can totally edit this out, but it was
no, I stand by what I said.
It was so funny, because it was the story of Jared from Subway came out, and everyone dumped on me. You're like, guys, the story isn't done yet. It's just an accusation. And it's oh no, you picked the wrong horse on that one.
I didn't say he's innocent. I never said he was innocent.
No.
I said I hate the way a story breaks, and you know why I was right? Well, I wasn't wrong about Jared. I said he could be guilty. I was right because this immediate jumping down the throat of everybody that gets accused of anything got us Trump again. Because the backlash to all the immediate cancel immediately. I was correct. People should have listened to me. Jared should still be rotting in prison. That's fine. I'm glad you remember that.